we have talked about why firms produce financial accounting information. Now let's look at the accounting standard setting in the US. Do you know what graph is it? The x-axis here is time, and the y-axis here is S&P 500. So this is a period of time called the Great Depression. And it all started from the market crash of 1929. So right before the market crash of 1929, that was a period called the Roaring Twenties. So as you can see here that it was a period of very good time for the market. Stock price just keep rising. Everyone's making money on the market. And it was also very easy to borrow from the bank to invest in stocks. And also firms which raise capital from the capital market at the time, they were not regulated. So firms can just do accounting whatever way they want. There was no unified accounting principle at the time. But all of a sudden, in October of 1929, market just crashed. And that was the beginning of the Great Depression. So there were, of course, a lot of the reasons for the Great Depression. But a lot of people think that one of the major reasons was because stock price was so inflated before the crash. And then one of the major reasons stock price was inflated to such a great level right before the market crash of 1929. A lot of people think that was because of the insufficient and misleading accounting information at the time. So in order to restore investor confidence, in 1933, Congress passed the Securities Act. And in 1934, they passed Securities Exchange Act. And these two acts set the accounting and disclosure requirement for firms traded in the public market in the United States. The 1934 Act also created SEC, which is Securities and Exchange Commission. Congress gave SEC the authority to set accounting and reporting standards for companies whose securities were publicly traded in the United States. So, so it is Congress which gave SEC the authority to set accounting standards. So let's look at the hierarchy of the standard setting in the US. As we just talked about, the Congress gave SEC the authorities to set accounting standard, but SEC have a lot of things to do. So it in turn delegate the accounting standard setting responsibility to some private sectors. And what private sectors? So it was CAP, the Committee on Accounting Procedures. It was from 1938 to 1959. And then it was APB, which is Accounting Principles Board, from 1959 to 1973. And it was FASB. Financial Accounting Standard, board from 1973 to the present. So these three private sectors, during the past, it's almost 100 years. It has produced thousands of accounting pronouncements, and those together, the documents, standards, pronouncement, those three organizations produce in the past years together, it is called US GAAP. Which is the United States generally accepted accounting principles. So which is also the accounting standard we need to follow now. And where to find the US GAAP pronouncements? So FASB has something called FASB Accounting Standard Codification, or the short term is codification. And that is the only source of authoritative US GAAP. So that is the only place you can find the US GAAP. And so where to access the codification? The link is here, and the username and password I posted it on Island. So please go on Island to find those username and password. Just try to log in the codification database once to see what it looks like. So and that is the only authoritative source you can find the US GAAP. We just talked about the accounting standard setting in the US. How about outside of the US? So outside of the US, just like inside the US, we have FASB, Financial Accounting Standard Board, which sets US GAAP. Outside of US, we have something called RASB, International Accounting Standard Board. And then the standard RASB set is called IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standard. So as you can see here, that this is a graph of IFRS implementations around the world, and this is in the year 2004, which were like around 15 years ago. As you can see here, it is only in those areas that we use the US GAAP. And there were a lot of the areas outside of the US. They were all using IFRS. They were all following IFRS. Then 8 years later, in 2012, as you can see here that those are the places which use US GAAP. And so all of these other places, they use IFRS. So one thing you should keep in mind that the accounting standard we're teaching in this course, we're teaching the US GAAP, but you should also keep in mind that outside of the US, a lot of companies in a lot of the other countries, they do not use US GAAP. The accounting standard they follow is called IFRS, and it is very common outside of the US. So the accounting principle they follow is a little bit different from what we are teaching in this class. So this is just something. There are a lot of similarities, but there are also there were also some differences. But one thing you should keep in mind is what we are teaching in this class, US GAAP, it is just one way to do accounting. A lot of the companies outside of the US, they are doing accounting a little bit different ways.